I decided to make this video on Wilma Mankiller, a hero of the Native American community, for an assignment on lesser-known figures in history. I chose Wilma because she is a hero to her people of the Cherokee tribe and a trailblazing feminist. She was the first female chief of the Cherokee tribe and worked tirelessly for her Native brothers and sisters through volunteer work and activism. I got my information from her autobiography, Mankiller, A Chief for Her People, which is an amazing read. Wilma Mankiller was born November 18, 1945, in Adair County, Oklahoma, on Cherokee Reservation. She was the sixth child of 11. Her first home was on 160 acres of land that was allotted to her grandfather via the Dawes Act, called Mankiller Flats. Her family was very poor and largely lived off the land. She got teased at school for her clothes that were oftentimes made out of potato sacks. But her family had a strong community within the tribe. During the 50s, the government was dealing with what was still at the times being called the Indian problem. They wanted to stop having to pay the tribes who were struggling with poverty and unemployment, and their solution was to disperse the tribes from their reservation and was in what was so lovingly referred to as termination. The Bureau of Indian Affairs, headed by Dillon S. Meyer, who earned his position by his successful dealing with the containment of Japanese Americans during World War II in internment camps. He decided to provide incentive for natives to move to urban areas for jobs. They would knock on doors and hand out pamphlets depicting natives living happily, thriving, living in big cities. Wilma's dad, who was struggling to raise his large family, decided to take them up on the offer and move to San Francisco, California. When they arrived, it wasn't all the government promised, and it took weeks to get the job and housing that was promised by the government, although eventually they did. They still struggled with money, and Wilma struggled greatly with the move and likened the drive of their people off the reservations in the 1950s to the Trail of Tears. She was taken from her home and living off the land to a world completely foreign to her. She was faced with neon lights, telephones, and elevators, all things Wilma had never seen until this point, and she didn't trust them. She married fresh out of high school and shortly after had her two daughters. The civil rights and establishment movement resonated with Wilma, but being a young mother and housewife, she was only able to be a curious observer of the changing of the nations. In November of 1969, this changed. 20 tribes went to the abandoned island of Alcatraz, citing a forgotten clause in a treaty agreement that stated unused federal land be turned back over to natives. Wilma didn't stay as long as others, the last of which were removed by federal marshals in 1971, but it marked a changing point in her life. Wilma went on to do amazing things for the tribes of the West, being a director of Native American Youth Center and volunteering for legal cases to keep Native land. Her husband was not so keen on her activism and wanted her to play the role of a docile housewife. Wilma, being the strong woman that she is, decided to leave her husband and return to Mankiller Flats after many years. All seemed great when she returned to her childhood home. She held many positions with the Cherokee Nation, including Economic Stimulus Coordinator, Program Development Specialist, and Director of Education. One day, her luck turned and she got in a horrible car accident that resulted in the other driver, her dear friend's, death. It also resulted in Wilma being bedridden for many months. After she finally recovered, she couldn't catch a break and developed muscular dystrophy that led to a period of her being unable to stand. She got a surgery and then quickly went back to work. She got appointed first female deputy chief before getting her title as principal chief, after her predecessor took a job at the Indian Bureau of Affairs. The more traditional people of her tribe didn't approve at first, but after many successful community plannings, one of note being revitalizing a poverty-stricken community and giving them running water for the first time, she was elected for her own merit by an 83% majority. Wilma died in 2010, but not before she accomplished such important work for her tribe and many others. She should be remembered as someone who fought for her community and who overcame great personal turmoil. And this is my works cited.